Hey guys, welcome back to Testing with Destined, and today I finally get to test my most anticipated unit, which is going to be coming on the 27th in 4 days from the time of this video being recorded. And as you can see, I have a ton of Wukongs to work with, and I'm planning on doing pretty much the only guide or showcase video you'll ever need. Tons of stuff is going to be in this video. There will be timestamps down below if you would like to skip ahead, skip around. But I'm going to take this slowly, and we're going to cover pretty much everything I think you would need to know. So, to start off, we have to talk about the kit. You don't start testing a hero without covering the kit. Wukong is a very, very strong fighter, which is going to be our next limited unit. Limited means that after you summon 200 rare shards or diamonds, you are guaranteed to get a copy. So everyone will be able to get him as long as you have enough resources. And Wukong is going to be the strongest one we've ever had. First of all, his stats are ridiculous. His base HP is one of the highest in the game with 28,000, sorry. He has 6,500 attack, a decent amount of defense, especially for a fighter. His cost is remarkably low, especially for a fighter, and he's just amazing, right? So let's get into the kit quickly. First of all, we have the talent. The talent is one of the more important parts about his kit, and the way it works is every 3 basic attacks you do, he summons 1 Sage's clone. The Sage's clone inherits all of the stats that he has and does 40% damage to one adjacent enemy. They also take 50% more damage. So they have their own health pool, similar to a Cyrus skeleton. This also counts as a summon. So for the heroes that work really well with summons, you will end up working with them, which is really good. It's essentially just a clone that's 40% of what Wukong's damage is, which is really, really impressive when we get to the fact that you can have 3 Sage clones on the field at a time. He also, by the way, has something called Undaunted Might, which we didn't know about before he was released on test server. But the way it works is each stack increases damage dealt to elites or bosses by 1%. And you get this every 30 seconds, up to 5 stacks. This cap is further increased with his A5, I'll get to very shortly. Now, if you're summoning a Sage clone and it's not possible, or there are already 3 on the battlefield, the 3rd basic attack that should have spawned the Sage clone will instead increase the hero's attack by 20% for 15 seconds. Very, very, very strong there. That is an insanely strong talent. His physical attack, which is, his normal attack, is 120% damage to one enemy. He is single target. Golden Cudgel Strike is one of his passives. This one's really cool because his basic attack is a 25% chance to deal 200% damage and inflict stun for 1 second. But if the enemy is immune to stun when triggered, it instead deals an extra 200% damage 1 time. So against bosses like Guild Boss 1, Guild Boss 2, really anything related to that, Maw and Guild v Guild, he's going to be doing 400% damage every single time he procs this, and it procs pretty often, even further when we get to his A5 once again, which I will show in a second. Golden Glare is his 2nd passive, and when the hero triggers Golden Cudgel Strike, the 1st passive I covered, he gains 1 stack of Sunder. The way Sunder works is you can stack up to 5 of it, and when you have 5, the ultimate consumes full stacks of Sunder, so when you click the ultimate, it'll consume it all if you have 5 stacks of it. If you don't have 5 stacks, it will just kind of maintain it until your next ultimate. And then this will enable the hero to ignore 60% of the target's defense for 15 seconds. This is insanely, insanely good for boss content, which he is amazing in. And even if it's not a boss content, he stuns them so much, and this also helps quite a bit. Now, his ultimate is one of the, strongest ultimates in the game. Crazy single target. The way it works is its rage cost is only 700, which is ridiculously low. It goes out very fast, and something about this which is interesting is the second you click it, you're able to start regaining rage again, so that actually makes it come back a lot faster than you would expect. It does 100% damage 18 times to one enemy and inflicts stun for 0.1 seconds on each hit, which is really good. Though it doesn't work as good in Guild Boss 2, unfortunately, which I will show second. Now, the Awaken 1. The way this works is kind of busted for stuff like GvG Gold and Boss 2. The first time you trigger your ultimate in each battle, so not on deployment, only once per battle, which is the only way of balancing this out. Monkey Business prevents death one time when the carrier takes fatal damage, dispels all debuffs on them, and restores half of their max HP. This is just giving everyone a Torador passive within 2 tiles. I'll show what this range looks like, because apparently it's not what we think it is. Still very good range, though. He also has plus 300 attack. You generally want percentage attacks when their basic attack is so high, but this is a good awakening. The A3, though, is something where that Golden Cudgel Strike ability, where you have a 25% chance to inflict stun when dealing damage, and if they're immune, it does extra damage. Now this works on the Sage's clone. So this is actually the key awakening to get him to stun on Boss 2 consistently, which I will obviously show in a minute. But when the enemy is immune to stun when triggered, deals only 150% damage, not 200%. And if they have Golden Glare, he'll also gain a stack of Sunder, which is actually really cool. So this is a very strong A3. We got Penetration. That is the best A4 to have on a damage dealer like this, so that is cool. And then the A5 is one of the strongest A5s in the game. I know War Guides thinks it's the best, which it could be, but essentially all you need to know is it doubles the damage instances of his ultimate, which he's getting all the time, by the way. It also raises Undaunted Might's stack cap by 25, so you're essentially infinitely going to be getting it up in a fight, because you're never going to have a fight be long enough to where this is going to get increased to the max cap when he's A5. So while it does have a cap, I shouldn't have said infinitely, but basically just know that he's always gaining strength as the time goes on, and in Boss 2 he might actually max this out and do 30% more damage just all the time, which is really cool. After using his ultimate Golden Cudgel Strike as well, has a trigger chance increase of 35% for 12 seconds. This is an insane deal, because Golden Cudgel Strike is a 25% chance. So this ends up being a 60% chance to get this on every single hit. You're going to be stacking those Sunder stacks, which allows you to do more damage, pierce type thing. I should say defense ignore. Sorry, a little confusing there. But you increase the chance of that. You double the ult damage. It's wild. It's wild. So that is an insane A5. If you can go for the A5, you want to go for the A5. Now the final thing is Golden Cudgel is his exclusive artifact. I will be using it on his build in every single test. The way it works is it increases damage by 30%. For a base one, it is only 20%, but the rage cost stays the same, similar to most exclusive artifacts, where when you summon a Sage's clone, additionally restores 6% rage. So he's constantly getting rage all the time. It is ridiculous. The gear that I have on him, which will remain consistent throughout the test, I tried to keep it as, average as I could if you have, ancient gear. We have 2 attack pieces and 1 crit damage. We have attack speed, warlord piece there, and then we have a 4 stat over here. Pretty solid gear. We're going to have very high HP just because he has crazy base HP, lots of attack, a little bit of defense, crit damage, sorry. A decent amount of attack speed because you want him with some pretty fast attack speed, and then crit rate at 99%. Something else to note is you actually want him in Soulbound Arcana. Infernal Roar does work for a lot of his kit, but for the things like his ultimate and his Sage's clones, they don't actually benefit from Infernal Roar, so you have to build him with Soulbound. But the way that this test for Boss 1 is going to work is I have a small team right here. We have Hollow. Hollow does not have anything like Invig or whatever on her. She's not even really geared that much. She's purely there to keep him alive, get a little bit of a rage out to kind of simulate a run, but only with 1 DPS. We also have Torador out here because I think most of us have Torador now due to recent events, and I think he's just so much better than Wrath, and I saw a lot of tests use Wrath. Unfortunately, he is A2, so Wukong will have a little bit of extra attack speed, unfortunately. Shouldn't be a big of a deal. And we also have some extra Nightmare units who will just be placed to buff Wukong. That is their only purpose. So, we're going to go into this with the A0, as you can see right here, with this gear that I showed you guys previously. I'm going to show the results, move on to the A3, A5. We're really going to see how he performs against his awakenings and also on the guild boss. See if he's really strong for it. We put Wukong down. We put Hollow. Then I'm going to put Gluttony, Baron, and Torador off to the side just to help buff him with the Nightmare bonus. And then I'm going to press the auto casting, and we're going to see how it goes. Now, the reason I picked Nightmare 3 for this is because Wukong can't solo Nightmare 4 without Awakenings. With Awakenings, he can solo all of the shields pretty easily. For now, we're going to do it on Nightmare 3. As you can see, he's ulting ridiculously fast, doing quite a bit of damage. And what's interesting is it seems like, despite his cast range for his clones, this is how big he can place clones from, it seems like he's only defaulting to the top 3 squares. So it looks like whatever area he's facing, he's going to default to whatever he could place there instead of placing it randomly off to the side. So it kind of minimizes a little bit of RNG with the clones. He's freaking ulting like crazy though. Look, 200k per hit. He's hitting 18 times. That's ridiculous. He's doing a lot of damage. So I'm probably just going to skip to the results, and then I'm going to show the results of the other 2 awakenings. So from an entire guild boss Nightmare 3 run with 0 support at all, his A0 did over 100 million damage, which is kind of ridiculous. But that's not even where it ends. His awakenings are insane. To save time, I'm just going to show them both at the same time. And they're nothing short of insane. You're going to want to awaken him. As you can see, the A3 and the A5 both did quite a bit better. The A3 did about 40% better, and the A5 did about 80% better than the A0. You can see the stats on the screen. Pretty impressive. So I was originally going to record a little bit of a treat of just a full A5 team of like all the limiteds and stuff. Something that's not replicatable, but I was just kind of curious to see how it would do. And what ended up happening is Wukong's actually the best DPS for Guild Boss 1 in the game. The way this is going to work is we're going to put down Wukong. Wukong will be in Laurel range, so he will do better than Kagiri and Lust. Maybe Kagiri can do slightly more, but either way, doesn't really matter. We're going to put Dolores has Invig, Laurel has Invig, Torador has Invig, and so does Hollow. So our 4 main DPS will get it. All of the A5 limiteds now have it, and then we are going to give it to Hex. As you can see, we got Invig, 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 and Invig. So everyone is on an even playing field. We're going to put down Silas. If Yovar is on the field, he will allow Hex to do a little bit more damage, but just the way that we're going to be doing this, it's going to be pretty shocking, honestly. So I'm just going to be clicking all of the alts as we go. I mean, realistically, it's not going to be flawless by any means, and it is a very RNG game mode. That's just how Guild Boss 1 is. But I was pleasantly surprised by Wukong's performance. So we're just going to keep it going right here, steamroll through the rest, and let me just show you guys the results at the end. Now, with the run done, we did almost 130k blood. This can definitely be higher. The gear's not ridiculous, but the awakenings are. And I just want to show you how insane Wukong is. Look at this! Like, obviously, there is a couple variations you could do that would get Hex more damage or Kagiri more damage. But I'm actually shocked by how much Wukong was doing. Actually insane. So, this really does just show you that Wukong is a monster for PvE content like guild bosses. He's obviously good in other stuff I will show later down the line, but jeez. Guild Boss 1, he is a monster. A monster. A monster. If you were struggling to hit 50k, even an A0 is going to get you over the edge. Now let's get on to Guild Boss 2, where he is still just as good, if not better. Before we get into the Guild Boss 2 runs, where I will do 3 once again, I wanted to share a little bit about, first of all, how Wukong stuns, and also how his A1 works before we get into the test. So I'm going to use Guild Boss 2, or APOC 2, as a vessel to kind of share that, and I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit of mechanic stuff. So first of all, Wukong is supposed to be very good at stunning the guild boss. This is an A0 Wukong, of course, and he has 18 stuns on his ult, and he also had a lot of stuns in his kit. So it's a no-brainer that he would very easily max out the guild boss 2 Saw phase, where you need stuns. But that's not really the case. So what you're going to see right here in a second is the boss is going to do a normal hit, as usual. And then the boss is going to charge up its saw in a second. This saw is going to charge up. When you stun him during, it'll push it back and add a stack of, damage reduction. It's kind of the main mechanic of this phase. But what you're going to see when we click his ult, it should be doing 18 hits, 1 stun each hit. But what you're going to see in the top left is not doing a lot of stuns. He only does 2 stuns in his ult. Maybe even just 1. And it really sucks. Sure, his basic attack still does stuns, and the ult technically does 1. But it's very, very disappointing that you cannot use him to get all of the stun stacks. So he's a lot less viable for this phase. A lot less than we thought, especially. But if I put out the A3, he is actually pretty consistent. So what this means is Moonton kind of has to fix how this works. I assume because it's so fast in quick succession, it is just, having some very weird interactions there. But unfortunately, he's nowhere near as good as he should be. If I were to try his A3 right here, you're gonna see how mediocre his stunning is unless you have his A3. We're gonna do the same thing at Wukong and Eloin. Eloin is going to just keep him alive a little bit, maybe get his ult a little bit faster. He's gonna put down his clones. The clones also do the stun, which is pretty cool. And then as soon as the saw goes out, we're gonna click the ult, and you're gonna see that he's decent at A3. His A3, this is pretty much full auto. He'll be great for autos for Guild Boss 2 because it's like just a passive thing he does on his basic attacks. Sure, it's RNG, but it's good. So the one bonus I will say is he is still better than Helga for, autos if you have him A3 for stuns. And if you don't want to use Helga because you need more damage, he might barely work for 120k as the solo stunner. If you have a Praetus, of course, you're going to max them out very easily, even with an A0 Wukong. So it's not that he's bad, but it's very, very disappointing that his stun does not work as intended. Let's get into the actual guild boss runs. The way I am going to do this is, as you can see, we have this team right here, which can allow us to get pretty far. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do 9 phases. So it's about, 3 of each one. And the boss is going to get 3 stacks, which should show up in the top left here. And then I'm going to stop, see how much damage Wukong did, and see how much, overall score we got compared to the other awakenings. Keep in mind the A3 and the A5 are going to be far better at stunning the saw. And I am running Praetus, but this is just an A5 Praetus to kind of show how close Wukong can get to a very well-built A5 Praetus, because it's just a good representation. Now, something I do have to cover before we get into it is a little bit of an issue with Wukong's clones in this. So what you're going to be able to see is if you have 5 ground units, you can place all the ground units down as normal. We put Kagiri up here, we put Lust, we put Torador, right? What you're going to notice is Wukong only has 2 tiles on the side. So he can only place 2 clones. And it causes a little bit of an issue. Now you might be thinking, what if you just face Wukong to the left, right? he's going to spawn 3 clones down because he puts 2 clones here and 1 clone there, right? What's the big deal there? Can't you just do it that way? No, you cannot. Because if you look, he's going to put 1 clone, 2 clones, 3 clones, and this clone will not deal damage at all. Now you might be thinking, oh, they're just being faced left because I faced Wukong left. That's actually not really what happens. What happens is if I were to pretty much, place everything as usual, let's just use these as a placeholder. What you're going to see is when they place it on the side, even facing the right direction, they're not going to be able to hit the boss, which really, really sucks when it comes to placing down your Wukong. So unfortunately, that is a little bit of a drawback, but we'll be able to get past it. So here's the placements that I will be using. It's pretty freaking basic, but I mean, if it works, it works, right? So I'm going to place everything like this, Alistair. Alistair's better to give Invig than Kagiri, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go through until I get to the 3 stacks, and then I'll show you guys the stats, move on to the next one, show you guys the stats, move on to the next one. If there's a different way you want me to show Guild Bus 2 runs and Guild Bus 2 testing in the future, please let me know. I'm pretty new to this sort of thing, obviously, and this is probably not the best way to show this, but either way, it is gonna suffice for this video. We all know that Wukong's gonna be pretty freaking great for this, but I want to see how great the Awakenings are.
A few minutes later.
While I'm about to be done my first A0 test, I'm actually kind of surprised by a few things. Number 1, Wukong and Praetus get their ults around the same time. If you didn't know, Praetus A1 is one of the strongest Awakenings in the game because it allows him to cycle his ult like crazy. Praetus has a very low ult cost. As you can see, it is only 700, similar to Wukong. But Praetus gets 3% rage every single basic attack he does. But surprisingly, Wukong actually gets his ult slightly faster. Really cool. What you can end up doing after you trigger everyone's ults, like you just saw happen there, what happens is they both get their ults. You could trigger them with Pharisee, for example, for a little bit of attack boost, and then they'll be up pretty soon near the next constant ult, which is pretty cool. Another thing is during the poison phase, which I should be able to get to quite fast, and it turns out these clones can actually be poisoned, but it's really weird because it's not even normal poison. Also, Wukong's back so much faster than Praetus there. That's just because Praetus has a longer ult, which is really interesting. So Wukong, you could just kind of spam all the time, and he's actually faster than Praetus. I just saw that they were like pretty similar in the run. Anyways, so Wukong, his clones can be poisoned, which we're gonna see in a brief moment, and then after the poison phase, I'll record all of the data and show it a bit later. It really is quite strange. Here we're about to get poisoned right now. I'm going to click Eloin ult so we don't die. And as you can see by the skulls above the Wukong clones, they can get poisoned. And what's interesting about this is it looks like they can only get 1 stack of poison, but it does the same amount as everyone else. So it's weird that they wouldn't show the number, but it would do the same amount of damage. Either way, it's pretty cool. And it really does prove that while the clones can get buffs, it's very interesting that they can also get most debuffs. Also, I should probably be focusing more on the game a little bit here. Whoops. I don't really want to talk about it. It's not the best test, okay? Cut me some slack. Anyways, once the boss goes up, I will be ending the run right here. Boom. It has gone up, and I will click quit the battle. So, to write it down, we did 65,000 score. Wukong did 150 million, doing a decent amount more than Lust and a decent amount more than Praetus. This is a bonded Lust with some very solid gear. So the fact that Wukong's doing a decent amount more is kind of crazy, and an A5 Praetus is only doing a little more than an A0 Wukong. Let me just quickly show the stats of the A3 and the A5, and we'll see how they compare. For the A3, I have successfully gotten to the end here. We got the 3 stacks. It's pretty loose. It's not the most accurate showing, but it is still pretty interesting. As you can see here, Lust did about the exact same damage. But Wukong actually went up by 30 million, and Praetus is around the same. Wukong is definitely creeping up on Praetus, and since what we saw in the Guild Boss 1 test, A5 did so much more damage, we're going to see a lot more as well. And keep in mind that the A5 will also increase his stuns, so he'll probably be able to put like 12 stuns out every single time. The fact that an A5 Praetus is being challenged by a Wukong, Praetus being one of the better DPS for Guild Boss 2, that's pretty damn impressive. But I'm really curious as to how good the A5 does. And the A5 actually really surprised me. Look at that damage. I think this was because I timed it a bit better from the downtime, but we did quite a bit more, and I'm actually really curious as to the damage numbers here. Because I was just kind of going through it on my own, and I didn't look at the damage. So, holy fuck! What the fuck? Okay. So if you want to go for APOC 2 scores, maybe get him to A5. Praetus did maybe 5 million less. Lust did about 8 million less. Pretty basic stuff there. But Wukong did so much more damage. What the hell? I'm shocked. So that is a massive jump. Now with the Guild Boss 2 runs out of the way, let's talk statistics. Of course, Praetus is the highest damaging unit on the A0 Wukong run because he is A5 and built well, but Wukong is right up at the top doing quite a bit of damage, 150 million, and Lust and Alistair obviously a little bit less. Alistair didn't have Invig. He's not really important though. I just tried to simulate a run. And the issue with Wukong for this, which you're going to see in the next slide, is there can be a lot of damage variations, especially in something as long as a Guild Boss 2 run, because so much of his kit and his damage is pure RNG. It's about a 25% chance to do a ton more damage. So he has a ton of instances to do that. It can really mess things up. And I think that's further amplified by his A3, which only happened to be about 17% better than the A0, which is a lot worse than I was expecting. If we go to the Guild Boss 1 run, which I will show in a second, just once again, you're going to see that the A3 was quite a bit better. And that's just because the clones are now allowed to have that RNG chance. And it's possible that if I were to run it again, he would do quite a bit better. A little bit frustrating there, but it's okay. As you can see, Praetus, Lust, and Alistair did almost identical damage. Now, the A5 is where it gets kind of crazy. He did so much more damage, completely outclassing Praetus there. And this is honestly an insane awakening. If you can go for this awakening, and you're not urgently in need of awakening someone else with, let's say, unpolished soulstones, this is definitely an amazing awakening to go for. Praetus, Lust, and Alistair, though, did lower their damage a little bit, but that is most likely because I clicked a couple ults maybe more often, and it got through the phases a little bit faster. Overall, though, not going to make that big of a difference. The A5 was about 80% better than the A0, and 50% better than the A3 in this test, which the A5 strength is further backed up by the Guild Boss 1 run that we just did a little bit earlier in the video. As you could see, the A3 did do better in the Guild Boss 1 test than it did in the Guild Boss 2, doing 40% more than the A0 versus the Guild Boss 2's run of 17% better, which is a little scuffed, but it is what it is. But the A5 does remain pretty similar with an 80% increase on the A0. So if you can, once again, get the A5. The A5 is very worth it for boss content. But boss content is not the only content in the game. There's still quite a few other areas I think Wukong will be S tier in. I had wanted to try Wukong in Arena for a little while, and I did. I tried him out a little bit, you know, I set a team and everything, and I realized he might actually be a replacement for Salazar. Now, if you didn't know, on global server, Salazar is key for every single arena team at the high level in single target. There's pretty much no exceptions, except for if you have an A5 Kagiri and you know how to use him. And that makes A0 Wukong being almost as good as A5 Salazar a big deal. So, Sebastian Kane's here. Shout out Sebastian Kane's. Highly recommend you guys check out his channel. Whoops, this GvG doesn't exist on test server. I pressed it again. Anyways, we have the single target team. Now, the single target team I will be fighting and the one that I will be using are very different. Because the one he is using is pretty much the meta one. The full meta does have Magda instead of Ardea, but it's very hard to do. So we're just going to run Ardea here. He has A5 Valderon, A5 Ardea, A5 Salazar. And what I'm using is A0 Valderon, A0 Ardea, and A0 Wukong. So even if we cut it even a little bit close, this is a big deal. And I just kind of wanted to show why I think Wukong has the potential to be better. Is it definitive that it will be better? Probably not. There is a couple factors, obviously, that would have to be taken into account. But I haven't seen anyone talk about how good he is for single target arena. I'm going to cover the Valderon versus Valderon matchup, and we'll be able to decide from there. Build-wise, Valderon has a very good Infernal Roar set. The gear on this guy is very solid. The gear on his is also pretty solid. I also have him with a tiny bit of Rage Regen just because I needed it, and a max Flux Pendant. Ardea has Realm Tear, as well as some very solid Soulbound Arcana, a little bit of Rage Regen as well. And then Wukong, I did switch up his build very slightly. I gave him one piece with Rage Regen on it, and then the weapon I put on has HP bonus now. So as you can see, this is the old gear I was using. I just essentially gave him more attack, more Rage Regen, and a little bit of attack speed. Okay? Let me just quickly show it. Also, Cyrene has HP Mana Spring with a lot of attack speed, and then Elowen just has a random Invig. It really doesn't matter. This really is a David versus Goliath battle, at least in terms of awakenings. And let me just kind of walk you through the strategy and why I think Wukong has a chance to take over Salazar in the meta. I unfortunately messed up the beginning really bad because, you know, the screen moves, unfortunately. Here, I'm going to put down Cyrene. Cyrene is going to build up her ult, and as soon as her ult goes off, we're going to place Valderon and immediately try to take down the first enemy. Unfortunately, it is an RNG fest for Valderon versus Valderon matchups. He does this thing, which is like a percentage chance, where he can jump in the air and slam for a ton of damage. That is random. So he's going to be winning some things that I could have won if I did it a certain, like, I did it again. You know, there's a lot of just annoying interactions like that, unfortunately. So just keep that in mind while going through. And keep in mind that we're not going to win this because, I mean, you saw his awakenings. I just wanted to share the Wukong interaction and show that he might have a lot of potential. Here we're going to place down Wukong. Sebastian's a little bit slow to get his Salazar out. We're still going to lose, though, because, you know, his Valderon is just so much stronger than mine. And then here, we're going to be able to trigger Wukong ult immediately after this enemy dies and the next one spawns. The interesting thing about Salazar is he has 200 more rage cost than Wukong, and he also gains it a little bit slower because of Wukong's exclusive, giving him 6% rage every clone he spawns. Something interesting about the clones is they function as Wailing Skulls, so enemies will also walk through them, which makes him even more viable. Because if they block them at the entrance, it will cause some issues. And because of the fast rage regen, you're really going to see the difference that Wukong makes. Unfortunately, the animations is slightly slower to start up than Salazar's, but that's something to cover very shortly. As you can see there, Salazar was not able to get the rage. If he placed him earlier, he might have been able to, but it really does just show the interaction. I'll tell you guys, right here, the the enemy's going to die, and then we will be able to trigger Wukong ult immediately after, because he already has it. Even though it's only been one round, we're able to click it here. Unfortunately, we do lose this round. I can't tell if that's a Salazar animation being faster type thing, or if it's because of his Valderon being so much stronger, which is the one thing that makes me a little bit, you know, confused if Wukong or Valderon or Salazar is better than the other. You know, that part's a little bit confusing. But it is interesting to see how fast Wukong gets his rage. Right there, boom. That wave is done. And as you could see, because Salazar used his ult on the last wave, he couldn't ult here, but Wukong could. And that just gives us a little bit of a leg up. So if I had similar awakenings in the rest of my team, it's possible that I would be able to win a lot easier if I used A0 Wukong versus his A5 Salazar. Unfortunately there, I didn't click the ults fast enough because Valderon wasn't getting enough rage, because he gains rage out of slams and he didn't slam enough. You know, it's all BS at the end of the day. But that is a very, very interesting interaction. And that also goes on to Praetus teams. I'm not going to show the Praetus team because I know a lot of you guys don't really like Arena. But let's say it's a Praetus versus Praetus team. And, you know, we are running Salazar on one team and Wukong on the other. I'm curious to see if Wukong will be better. Especially at A5, he's probably quite a bit better. But it is just an interesting thought to have. I was really going to do like some random Nightmare team, you know, just showing, oh, Wukong's decent in a Nightmare team. But nah, I think he might actually be a little better than Salazar. I know that's not the best representation, but the fact that Wukong and Salazar are pretty similar, in previous tests that I did before this, Wukong actually was far out damaging him. But that's also partially because his Valderon's just stronger than mine, but my RD is stronger than his. It's really hard to get a conclusive answer here. But all I wanted to say is if you were planning on skilling your Salazar for Arena, just for Arena, just know that if you skill Wukong, you could use him for the exact same purpose. And an interesting thing to go along with that is the fact that Salazar actually has a little less HP than Wukong has, because Wukong has one of the highest HPs in the game. You can see that he has 28,000 and a bit of change on his HP. Makes it very easy to get 53,000. I have 2 HP bonus subs right here. 20%, 20%, and 12%. That's it. And he already has over 50k. And if you go over to Salazar, he has about 24k, which is also very high, but it is something to take into account. I just find it really interesting. If you guys can cook something with this, I am not an experienced Arena player, but I figured since I found out this interaction, maybe he could replace Salazar in some top teams. I'm not sure. We'll have to see what happens when someone like Merton decides to tinker around with him, because I am very curious to find out. So if you thought this long-ass video was over, I have still a few more things to show you guys, including how he works in something more unconventional like Soleil, which I know is probably the hardest boss in Epilogue. At least it's the one that people are most frequently stuck in. This boss is hell. Wukong kind of deletes it from existence. And this was actually shown to me by War Guides. Right before I had test server, he just kind of showed me how much damage he did to Soleil. And I don't think he made a video on it, so I'm going to cover it. But you're going to see he does ridiculous amounts of damage. If you didn't know, Soleil was pushed 1 tile forward. So you can actually hit her generally with 2 tile range units, or mages right here. Like if I put a Praetus here, he'd be able to hit Soleil. That's actually how I beat it on my main account. It's really interesting. And Wukong is a menace. So I'm just going to show you guys what the A0 with the normal gear looks like. This is actually the Arena gear. I forgot to swap it off. Doesn't really matter though. It's pretty much the same gear. Wukong just kind of gets his ult really fast and is just always doing a ton of damage. So, I mean, Wukong's crazy. So, this is only him, by the way, guys. Hex can barely solo this first phase on his own with a damage booster. Like, he can with his exclusive, but the fact that it's, like, somewhat comparable to some of the more powerful units in the game, kind of nuts. So here, at 0 seconds, we're going to get Soleil down to 76.3. His A3, I'm pretty sure, would solo that first phase. Or you could just use his A5, which I'm gonna put down because I think it's really funny. I want to show you guys how freaking strong this guy is. If you have him awakened versus his awakening, we already know that he's very strong. But the fact that his A0 can almost solo that first part is pretty crazy. Like, I think it's really interesting. And his A5 obviously is going to stomp it into the ground. It's very hard to find strong enough melee units for this. So we're just going to kind of do our best. I'm going to put down Hex and everyone here just so we can do the entire run. So I could show how well Wukong A5 takes care of the final area. So just let me quickly put this on, and then I will grab a Brokir and a Constance to round it out. Let's go. Wukong should, on paper, solo the first and the third phase on his own, which is insane. Here we're going to put down Wukong. This is A5, but it is still worth showing. We're going to put down, you know, this, and then we're going to see what happens. I'm hyping it up too much. I should just let it speak for itself. Here, Wukong ult immediately. Look at that. Look at that HP drop. 5% instantly, and that's not even including the part where he gets buffed after. Isn't that kind of stupid? Like, what the hell? Here, I'm going to set the team at the end just quickly, and we're going to keep on spamming Wukong right here. He's already down half of the boss's HP. That is ridiculous. We're going to click Dolores because I know that Wukong will have enough rage to come back very fast. Very, very cool stuff there. Wukong, is he going to delete it? Yes, he is. It's so stupid. Like, why? It's a fighter. It's not designed for this stage. But that is an application you could use Wukong if you needed an option. Like, I know a lot of people, they're struggling with this thing. You know, they have a Piercer Lord, but they're struggling with the second phase or the first phase or something. Well, an A0 Wukong and, you know, a Yovar would solo it. You know, there's just a lot of potential here. This is not like a, you guys have to use this type of thing. But it really does just kind of show how strong he is. And some different kind of out-of-the-box ways you can use him. Because, I mean, you could use him in most places, which is pretty cool. He might not come back really fast enough at the end here, but I'm going to try my best. Wukong. And then we're going to put down Dolores, Eloin, and then Torador, and then see what we can do. Here we also have Yovar to help a little bit. But we'll see what happens. I'm going to put this down, do as much damage as possible. Yovar is going to get blasted out of existence, just cause. And then Wukong should be able to do most of the work, which is great. Of course, it is a little bit of a mess at the end here, as usual. I'm just going to swap in Constance and Aelin. You know, this is a very hard stage for a reason. Just because everyone freaking dies at the end. It's a little frustrating, but it's how it goes. And there we go. Wukong would have ulted and killed it anyways, but Silas is there to help. It's pretty cool, honestly. Like, I know a lot of people are going to be like, Destined, that's not that interesting. But I mean, look at this. it's pretty sick in my eyes. Where he can just kind of solo it. I'm pretty sure you could solo the second phase if he's A5, which is kind of nuts. The second phase is a lot more HP. Either way, very, very interesting stuff there. And that is an option. You could just put a Lord, Wukong, and then Piercers, and you can win. Throw in like another unit there just to help out if he's A0 once again, but very interesting there. And then Epilogue Stage 6. I mean, this is a freaking no-brainer. He's a 2 tile unit with crazy single target. I don't really have the time right now because it is literally Christmas Eve, a couple hours from Christmas by the time of me recording this. So I'll just let you guys fill in the gaps in your mind. Just know he's freaking disgusting. Before I send you guys off with some of my final thoughts, we have to do a little bit of a deep dive into Wukong's A1. Because I was asked a couple questions by some guildmates who wanted to know how it worked so they would understand his usage in GvG Guild a little bit better, and a couple other things. And it's actually really weird. And I don't think anyone's talked about it yet. So I'm going to talk about it. Once again, to recap, Monkey Business is a buff that gets applied on allies within 2 tiles, where they gain a buff called Monkey Business. It happens 1 time per game, and it prevents death 1 time when the carrier takes fatal damage, restoring them a 50% of their max HP, and dispelling all debuffs on them. So how does it work? How does the range work? How does it work when used with Carnelian or something like Lily? You know, all of that stuff. Like, is it a slow activation? That's what I want to show you guys today. So, let's talk range first. Bear with me here. This is not the best map to practice it on, but I just want to show you guys. So, how does the range work? Well, I'm just going to tell you guys. The range is Dolores range. That is what the range is. The range is just completely a Dolores range. As you can see here, Dolores' range is within 2 tiles, right? It's 2 tiles to the right, 2 tiles up, 2 tiles down, 2 tiles to the left, and then these tiles around her are 1 down, 1 to the right, or 1 to the right, 1 up. That is 2 tiles. So Wukong applies it in a Dolores range. That is how it works. And we can test this by putting it in the similar range if we imagine a Dolores having it. So, how does this work? We're going to just kind of put everyone over here, and we're going to see who gets affected by Monkey Business first, or who gets affected by Monkey Business. Here I'm going to click the alt, and it's going to apply on everyone. As you can see right here, I know I kind of made it pretty fast. What you're going to see is this yellow ring on the heroes who get hit by Monkey Business, who get the buff. This is how you know the buff is successfully on a unit. And when they die, it will trigger the ability. Everyone here is currently dying. As you can see, Hex did not get it because he is not in a Dolores range around Wukong, and Arrogance did not get it because he's not in the range that it gets applied in. So, when Arrogance dies, he will immediately die. But when someone like Kagiri dies, you're going to see his HP jump up immediately, up to half HP, instantly. Oh, well, he didn't die. How did he die? What the hell? Whatever. We're going to keep it going and then see who dies here. There we go. Kagiri got it affected. It brought him up to lots of HP. Dolores is going to die here, immediately get a ton of HP. It looks like it might give it based on Wukong's HP. I'm not 100% sure because it did just get it up to Dolores. There's still a couple unanswered questions there, but we'll be able to figure it out with time when everyone has it. Now, the other thing that I think is really important to try is the interaction with Carnelian. For something like GvG Guild, it's very important that you know how it works, because if Carnelian manages to put an orb on, say, a Brokir, and then when Brokir dies, even with the Carnelian orb, it triggers his unyielding first, you generally do not want that. So, we have to figure out how the ordering works, which one pops first when faced with a lot of unyielding things. And the answer is actually really interesting. So first of all, we have the Carnelian orb on Wukong, and now we have his little, boost, his buff. The Monkey Business is now on as well. Which one triggers first? That is my question. He's about to get hit. He should lose it here, or pretty soon, either way. And then we're going to be able to see if he loses it first. And as you can see right there, before he gets hit with burning, the carnelian orb triggered first, and then the monkey business. But what happens if carnelian puts another orb on before that next monkey business? That is my question. Here we're going to put down Wukong once again. And this time, before I do what I was just saying I wanted to try, is I'm going to try putting Wukong's monkey business before carnelian's orb. Here, Wukong monkey business going to be put out like before, but this time carnelian's going to put her orb onto Wukong later. And we're going to see how that works. Ignore carnelian, we're looking at Wukong. I'm actually going to let this kill us here because it'll one-shot us in one quick burst instead of having that burning like before where it's a bit wonky. Here, we're going to get hit. Boom. Monkey business procs before carnelian. What does this mean? It means whichever is put out first gets taken away first. They have a type of, one by one priority. And whichever comes first, whichever one goes in a line and goes in first, is allowed to go first. But what happens if you have carnelian orb on Wukong? And then you trigger the buff, monkey business. And then you lose the orb, but not the monkey business. And then you gain another orb before the monkey business gets put in. How does that work? So here we're going to put down the monkey business. It's now orb and then monkey business. So reasonably, what can we expect? We can expect that monkey business will trigger after the orb. But then what happens? And I'm going to show that very, very quickly. Here, we're going to get hit with this same immediate damage like before, where it's going to one-shot us. Trigger one of our unyieldings. Our carnelian thing. Next, we're going to have carnelian put out another orb. Then I'm going to sell her so he can actually die. This is not the best way to test this, but I hope it works anyways. Here, Wukong is going to die, hopefully on this attack. Boom. Monkey business triggers before the orb, which makes sense, but it's very important to talk about because this is an important interaction. Let's say, for Guild v Guild, I have a Carnelian and a Toreador team. I am against an opponent who decides to kill my Toreador. The way it will work is we will have Carnelian put the orb on Toreador. Toreador will get attacked, lose the orb, and then die, triggering his passive, one of his 2 revives, unless he's 8/5. And then you will be able to, get another Carnelian orb and stay alive a little longer, but you can still die fairly easily. How does Wukong work? Well, if we're going off of how we showed it in the test server, we know that the way it will work is if you can get a Carnelian orb on Toreador, trigger Wukong's ult after the orb is on Toreador. The way it will work is when Toreador loses the Carnelian orb and is supposed to die, triggering his passive, it will instead trigger the monkey business, keeping him alive, preserving his revive, and then Carnelian has that time, that window, to put it back on Toreador. And then what will happen is you have to kill that Carnelian orb, then kill Toreador. He will revive, and then you have to kill his Carnelian orb again, and then you have to kill Toreador. And if he's A5, you have to kill another Toreador life, another Carnelian, and then kill Toreador. It's going to be freaking hell. The way that you're going to have to try to do it is kill Toreador before he gets a Carn orb, but if you place it properly, that's impossible. Wukong will be a menace in Guild v Guild. A menace, a menace, a menace. And I guess now I should put out my closing statements on Wukong. Number one, I think the most important thing that no one ever talks about. This game is a game. It is for having fun. Well, Wukong is fun. This is one of the most fun characters I have ever played in this game. I have spent the last day or so testing him out in a variety of content, having a lot of fun while doing it. I think he's going to be one of the most versatile fighters in the game. Unfortunately, he cannot hit air. And he cannot do AoE damage. Those are his only two limitations. Everything else, he is going to be amazing, amazing, amazing for. Do I think he's worth Awakenings? Do I think he's worth Unpolished Soulstones? Absolutely. But only if you need the A1 for something like Guild v Guild, or you want that A5. I would say the A3 is not as substantial enough for me to pick over something like a Kagiri. The only thing, though, is something like Kagiri is pretty damn good in guild bosses, but Kagiri is not very good anywhere else. Obviously, an A5 in Arena is pretty good for single target. I've seen some people use him in AoE, but that is kind of the limitations of Kagiri. Wukong, on the other hand, is good everywhere. Everywhere you can use him, he will be good. Anywhere without AoE or air, and he can reach with his 2-tile range, he will be a monster. That's just a fact. He's incredibly strong. His clones work incredibly well. They dive enough to where his exclusive artifact ends up working very well. He does not block enemies with them, which is great for something like a single target. He has a lot of potential, and I don't even think I've scratched the surface of what he can do in a couple other pieces of content. Something like a campaign. Campaign is actually hard now. So, Wukong might be good for a couple of those stages. He's going to be really good for Void Rift. If you are earlier on in the game, he is going to be one of the best units on your account. If you are later on in the game, he will still be one of the better units on your account. Can you use him without a Torador? Yes, you can. He will just do about 30% less damage. Maybe even a little less from there. But either way, he is amazing, amazing, amazing. I highly, highly recommend you guys pull for him. No matter what. I don't care who you are. If you do not pick him up, you are an idiot. I know that's an aggressive statement, but it's a true statement. I really want you guys to pull for him, because he's ridiculous. Anyways, that is my closing statement there. I think he will be a menace, of course, like I've been saying the entire time, and a lot of fun. Highly recommend. I hope you guys pull him and whatever extra copies you would like. Make sure to like and subscribe. This video was a lot of work to put together. I had a lot of fun though, so I will be making some videos similar for stuff like Eris and Ingrid when her banner is about to come out, stuff like that. Let me know if you guys have any tips, any input on the video. This is one of my first test server videos, if not my first, and I would appreciate the input. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it was a long one, but I hope it was enjoyable. And that's it for me. Destined signing out.